Good morning. How you doing today? So good to see everybody. It is an exciting day. Like Mackenzie said, I love Baptism Sunday. We get to celebrate in a few minutes. It's going to be so incredible, and we're glad you're here. My name is Cullen. I'm the lead pastor, and if I didn't get a chance to meet you, welcome to Reach Church. Hey, we're about family and fun, so we consider you part of our family today. Even if you're here for the first time, we appreciate you being here. It's going to be a continued amazing day together. How many of you have a dog? Let me just ask this question. How many of you have a dog? A lot of people got a dog. Yeah. Does anybody happen to have an electric fence? Anybody have an electric fence for your dog? Maybe a couple people. How many of you know how an electric fence works? Okay, yeah. Just to make sure we're on the same page, electric fence, if a dog goes beyond a certain point in the yard, then the collar gives them a shock, right? The collar shocks them. And so the dog learns where the boundaries in the yard are. So that's kind of the point, right? The dog learns where the boundaries are so they don't cross the boundaries. And the idea is they'll stay within the boundaries so that they're safe. So it's really about creating a safe environment for the dog. Now, Pastor John Ortberg, he's also an author. He told this story about a friend of his who had a dog with an electric fence around his yard. And this particular dog had a very strong impulse to leave the yard on a regular basis. It was a naughty dog, all right? And this dog especially wanted to leave the yard, particularly when a girl dog, any girl dog, would stroll by, because this dog wasn't choosy. This dog had very strong hormones, all right? So sometimes when a girl dog would go by, this guy dog would think to himself, if that's possible, I'd like to pursue that relationship. But I know there's going to be a painful shock if I do that. Is it really worth it? Okay? And so the dog would kind of cock his head and think to himself and come to the conclusion of, yeah, I think it's worth it. And so this is what the dog would do. The dog would back up, and it would get in one corner of the yard that is far away. And then it would run as fast as it could. It would build up a big head of steam, all right? And it would sprint, and it would run right through the electric fence. Okay? But the shock was so powerful because they had the voltage amped up about as high as it could go. So high that it actually knocked the dog out. Okay? So here you have this unconscious dog flying through the air. Dog's knocked out, unconscious dog flying through the air. And because he's running so fast, his momentum carries him beyond the invisible fence. So the invisible boundary, right? The boundary that's there. So there the dog is. The dog lays motionless, unconscious, in like a comatose state until he finally wakes up. He wakes up, shakes himself off, okay? And then he remembers why he did what he did. And then he goes off running, chasing this girl dog once again. Okay? That's this dog. Now, this dog is headed for trouble if he keeps breaking these boundaries. Right? He's headed for trouble if he keeps doing what he's doing here. And the same is true for us. Okay? Boundaries keep us out of trouble. They do. And so, really, a life without boundaries is destructive. And that's what we want to talk about today. This idea that a life without boundaries leads to brokenness. Yeah, a life without boundaries, it leads to brokenness. I think a lot of people, though, they cringe at the idea of putting boundaries around their life. They're like, what are you talking about? That restricts me. I don't want boundaries. It kills my fun. It kills my joy. It kills the adventure, opportunities, the excitement. And this is what we think. When we think of boundaries, we think it's a negative thing. But what we often fail to realize is that a life without boundaries is a life that is destined for destruction. You see, proper boundaries, they actually don't restrict us or hold us back. They actually enhance our life. You see, boundaries make our life better, not worse. They make it a lot better. And so when we bypass boundaries, or we live without them, or we just kind of say, forget it, I'm gonna be like that dog. Go through the boundaries of the electric fence, so to speak. It actually leads to brokenness. It does. It leads to our brokenness, And then it also leads to brokenness for those around us. It's not just an individual choice we make, but other people experience that as well. And so this whole thing we're talking about, it's really the beginning of a brand new series that's called How to Mess Up Your Life. Okay? How to mess up your life. How many people came to church today because you wanted to hear how you could mess up your life? A couple people did. You're like, yeah, that's me. I want to hear how I can mess up my life. No, you probably didn't come to church today thinking about, I want to hear how I can mess up my life. Yeah, why? Why? Because, have you noticed that it's easy to mess up your life? Right? We don't need so much instruction about how to mess up our life, okay? Because it's pretty easy to do that. In this series, okay, we're going to talk about things like hang-ups. We're going to talk about power. We're going to talk about position. We're going to talk about overreactions. We're going to talk about anger. I mean, all these things. It's just really, it makes it easy to mess up our life. But as we think about this topic, we also realize that it's hard to get our life back together again. Isn't it this crazy dynamic? Super easy to mess it up, but it's really hard to get it back together again. And so we're going to talk about how to prevent the mess before it ever happens. And then we're also going to talk about how to undo the mess once it's already happened. Because if you're human, and we all are, then we all have messes in our life that we need to kind of help undo. And then we can also help to prevent future messes from taking place as well. So we're going to talk about all these things like that in this series. And this is also the beginning of a brand new journey through another book of the Bible. We like to pick a book of the Bible and dive really deep in it and go through it, create series out of that. Like, for example, probably over the past year and a half maybe, we went through the whole book of 1 Corinthians, a letter that Paul wrote to the church in Corinth, and we did a lot of series on that. It was a great journey, fun journey. And some people, because I kind of teased it last week, I'm like, we're going to start a brand new book of the Bible, and I didn't tell anybody what it was. And so a lot of people came up to me, and they're like, you can tell me. What book of the Bible are we going to go teach on and study and talk about? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, okay? It's this book called Esther. Yeah, maybe it's a book you never heard of before. It's a shorter book. It's in the Old Testament part of the Bible. That's the section of the Bible that was written before Jesus was born. But I got to tell you, man, the book of Esther, it is full of great storylines, full of action, plot, twists, and turns, like reversals of fortune, stuff you didn't see happening, coming here and coming there. You know, and if I could just sum up the book in one sentence, I'd probably say it's something like this. It might be about the reality of God's divine providence. The reality of God's divine providence. And really, it has so many practical applications to our lives. It's going to be a real exciting journey that we're going to go on. Now, we're not exactly sure, we're not 100% sure who the author of Esther actually was. Some scholars think it could have been the main character, one of the main characters in the story, Mordecai. We'll talk about him in future weeks here. Some scholars think it was Ezra. Ezra was a Jewish scribe and a priest who wrote some of the other biblical books, but probably one of those guys wrote this one. But we're going to dive into this story, and we're going to see how a life without boundaries leads to brokenness. So I want you to get into this story with me, okay? So if you were here through our 1 Corinthians series over the past year and a half or so, you know that was a letter, different type of writing of the letter from the Apostle Paul to the church in Corinth. And so that read like a letter, like you'd write a letter. Now this is a story though. How many of you like stories? Stories are cool, okay? So this is going to be, it reads like a story. So I want you to get into this story as we open this up today. You can kind of feel what's going on here with me. We're going to look in Esther chapter 1. And we're going to read the first number of verses here. In this story, it says this: these events happened in the days of King Xerxes, who reigned over 127 provinces stretching from India to Ethiopia. At that time, Xerxes ruled his entire empire from his royal throne at the fortress of Susa. In the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his nobles and officials. He invited all the military officers of Persia and Media, as well as the princes and nobles of the provinces. Then we go to verse 4. It says, the celebration lasted 180 days. A tremendous display of the opulent wealth of his empire and the pomp and splendor of his majesty. When it was all over, the king gave a banquet for all the people from the greatest to the least who were in the fortress of Susa. It lasted for 7 days and was held in the courtyard of the palace garden. Then verse 6 says the courtyard was beautifully decorated with white cotton curtains and blue hangings, which were fastened with white linen cords and purple ribbons to silver rings embedded in marble pillars. It's crazy, right? Then gold and silver couches stood on a mosaic pavement. There was marble and mother of pearl and other costly stones. Drinks were served in gold goblets of many designs, and there was an abundance of royal wine reflecting the king's generosity. And verse 8 says, by edict of the king, no limits were placed on the drinking, for the king had instructed all his palace officials to serve each man as much as he wanted. At the same time, Queen Vashti gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes. Then finally, verse 10 says, on the 7th day of the feast, when King Xerxes was in high spirits because of the wine, he told the 7 eunuchs who attended him to bring Queen Vashti to him with the royal crown on her head. He wanted the nobles and all the other men to gaze on her beauty, for she was a very beautiful woman. Now, there's a lot going on here. King Xerxes was the ruler of the Persian Empire at this time, stretched all the way from India to Ethiopia, 127 political provinces total. So a lot of leadership over these provinces. And he had inherited an enormous amount of wealth from his father Darius. This dude was rich, like he had it all. And the opening story shows the crazy display of wealth that he had, right? And we'll talk more about that in the next message in this series. So hang tight on that. Just kind of get ready for that one. But in the 3rd year of his reign, he throws what I'm going to say, in my opinion, is one of the largest parties the world has ever known. One of the largest parties the world has ever seen. This party lasted 180 days. That's a total of 6 months. That's a half a year party. Can you imagine a party that lasts for half a year? A party that lasts for 6 months? Some people here are thinking, how do I get in on that one? Like, get me on that guest list. A 6-month party. Now, it's likely that King Xerxes was using this massive party as a strategy to plan a military invasion of Greece as an act of revenge for his father. So he was most likely trying to do several things. One, he was trying to bring everybody together so they could get on the same page and plan this big military campaign. He was also trying to show off his wealth and power and prove that he had enough money, he had enough resources to make all this possible. And then he wanted to make sure people enjoyed this massive party because he was throwing this thing, right? So that all these people, if they enjoyed it enough, then they would do what he was going to ask them to do because he had some asks he was going to throw in there. There's also something that the original readers of the story of Esther, they knew that we really wouldn't know unless you really dig into this, do some study. But I'll tell you what it is. King Xerxes actually got defeated by Greece 4 years later after this event that we just read about happened. And that defeat, it depleted his royal wealth. So the author of Esther wrote this long after his defeat. So the original readers of this story, they would have known that King Xerxes had this like terrible reversal of fortunes going on. And this was going to set the stage for another reversal of fortunes and a reversal of destiny within the book of Esther. So what I'm saying is get ready for some drama and some surprises as we go through this story over this next period of time. So you got to be here every week because some exciting stuff's going to happen. All right? But today we're looking at how a life without boundaries, it leads to brokenness. Now, at this massive 6-month party that was being thrown, there's a key phrase that sets the tone for our topic today. Let's put this on the screen here. It's verse 8. It says, by edict of the king, no limits. Everybody say no limits. No limits were placed on the drinking, for the king had instructed all his palace officials to serve each man as much as he wanted. One translation says, the drinking was according to the royal decree. There are no restrictions. No restrictions. And because there were no boundaries, no restrictions on drinking, it led to a lot of brokenness. And the entire book of Esther is set in motion through the lens of this brokenness. So we're going to talk about some principles of brokenness, okay? Because it's important that we have awareness of what breaks us. Everybody say awareness. You see, awareness is important. We got to have awareness so that we don't become broken. So we want to have awareness of brokenness. Then we're going to look at, to close out, some principles of freedom so that we don't fall into the same trap as King Xerxes, and we know how to get out of messes, maybe that we're even in right now, okay? But first, let's look at some principles of brokenness. The first principle of brokenness is this: cravings attempt to control us. Cravings attempt to control us. They really do. Now, have you ever told yourself, have you ever just said, you know what, I'm only going to eat one French fry? Just one. Turn to somebody and say, just one. Hey, but before you know it, the entire order of French fries is gone. Okay? Why? Because one led to another, led to another, led to another, kind of got our cravings going, right? And that's what happened. Or have you ever told yourself, I'm just going to eat one or two potato chips? Just one or two. Maybe one or two Pringles, one or two Doritos, right? And then somehow, the whole bag is like gone. Just a few minutes later, we pretty much downed the entire bag of chips. Has it ever happened to anybody? You don't have to raise your hand. Or it's like, you know what, I'm just going to taste, just a taste test. I'm going to taste one of those Oreo cookies, just one of those Oreo cookies, maybe pop it in some milk. And pop it in my mouth. Anybody like milk with Oreo cookies? Ice cold milk in an Oreo cookie. Am I showing my age there? Like, I don't know what you're talking about. All right, whatever. So Oreo cookies, right? Just going to take one of those things, pop it in milk, get it in my mouth, right? And then before we realize it, we have sampled an entire sleeve of Oreo cookies. Where'd those things go? I downed them. I popped the whole sleeve. Why? Because cravings often control us. That's what happens, right? In this story, we see a king who's controlled by his cravings. Alcohol, no restrictions. It said it, alcohol, no restrictions. The king was wasted. The king got totally drunk. Another one of his cravings was gluttony. No restrictions on food, indulging in food for like 6 months at the 6-month party, and then he's going crazy. Another one of his cravings was lust. He was most likely being entertained by slave girls dancing in seductive ways while he's drunk. This is the atmosphere of what's happening. We're just being real. This is what's going on. Okay? He didn't want any restrictions being placed on his cravings, and as a result, his cravings actually controlled him. Now, here's the irony. This king didn't want to be controlled. He wanted to be in control, right? He wanted to be in control. I'm ruling these lands, 127 provinces, going to conquer the world. I got all this stuff, okay? He didn't want to be controlled, but because he had unrestrained appetites in his life, or appetites with no boundaries, his cravings actually begin to control him. He became controlled by the very things he was looking to for freedom of expression. He became controlled by those very things. It's ironic. For us, we actually become controlled by the things we turn to when we're in trouble, or we're in stress, or when we want to escape from something. Did you hear that? We are controlled by the things we turn to when we're in trouble, when we're stressed out, or when we want to escape. Those are the things we're actually controlled by. Doesn't matter what we say. So we can actually ask this question: what do I turn to when I'm stressed? What do I turn to when I'm in trouble? What do I turn to when I want to escape? Because guess what? The answer to that question is a good indication of what we're controlled by. We can claim it all day. Oh, I'm not really controlled. No, but if you turn to that during stress, during trouble, or when I want to escape, that's what controls us. So what controls us, really? Is it food? Is it sex? Is it pornography? Maybe drugs. You know what? It could be something that seems like a need, like shopping. But we turn to it, not just when we need something, we turn to it for an escape. We turn to it when we're stressed. We turn to it when we're in trouble. The Amazon app. Boom. eBay. Boom. When I'm stressed, see what I'm saying? Or do we binge watch shows and movies when we're so stressed out because we're going to turn to something, or we're in trouble, we go for that. Maybe it's gambling. Maybe it's overworking. We can all sometimes praise, you work a whole lot, but maybe we turn to overworking when we're stressed out, when we're in trouble, because it's an outlet for us. Does that control us? Maybe it's video games. Maybe it's social media. Could be our phones. Do you see what I'm saying? Could be anything. And what we discover is that many people are being controlled by something other than Jesus. That's just a fact. And that leads to brokenness. What do we do with this? Well, we actually, one of the solutions that we have, we're going to put this on the screen, it's called Celebrate Recovery. We have a wonderful Celebrate Recovery. It's part of our Dream Center Des Moines, and it's fantastic. It's really meant to help us out in this area. It helps us with our hurts, with our habits, with our hangups. We all have them in some ways. It's faith-based. It gives biblical answers to the cravings that try to control us. Starts out with a meal every Sunday evening right out in the lobby, 4:45 p.m. You don't need to register, just show up, all right? Just show up tonight, show up at any Sunday, and there's going to be somebody from Celebrate Recovery in the lobby today. There'll be a little banner over there at a table, and you can go talk with them if you'd like some more information about that. But we want to provide you with solutions today, and this is a solution for the cravings that try to control us, all right? That's the first principle. Second principle of brokenness is this: as appetites increase, satisfaction levels decrease. As appetites increase, satisfaction levels decrease. Now, maybe you've read the tale of King Midas, or have you ever heard the phrase, the Midas touch? How many of you have heard the phrase, the Midas touch? Yeah, a lot of us have heard that phrase, the Midas touch, okay? Where does that come from? Well, there's an old tale about King Midas who had this huge appetite for more wealth, and one day he was granted this ability to take one wish. King Midas, you get one wish, and you can wish for anything that you want to wish for, and this wish will come true. What's it going to be for you, King Midas? Well, because he loved wealth, he wished that everything he touched would turn to gold. So initially, he loved it. He loved the fact that he would, touch a table, the table would turn to gold, the chairs were turning to gold, and the other objects he was touching were turning to gold. He just loved it, to see all this gold around him, how easy this was, right? But then he realized that the rose he wanted to smell, he touched the rose and it became this hard metallic substance before he was able to bring it to his nose and enjoy the scent. Then that wasn't so good. And then the food he tried to eat, he went to get the food, and before he put it in his mouth, because he touched it, it turned to gold, and he wasn't able to savor the food that he wanted to enjoy so much. And then when he went to hug his daughter, she also turned to gold, and he wasn't able to have, her human embrace. So his increased appetite for gold led to decreasing satisfaction levels instead of more satisfaction. His increased appetite for gold led to decreased satisfaction levels instead of more satisfaction. And this is the way it is when we live our lives trying to find satisfaction in self-indulgence. It was also this way for the king in our story from the book of Esther. We'll put up the verses 3-5, they're on the screen. We already talked about how he gave this banquet for his nobles and officials, invited all the military officers from Persia. And again, the celebration lasted 180 days. We talked about that, right? But verse 5, look at this. He said, when it was all over, the king gave a banquet for all the people from the greatest to the least who were in the fortress of Susa. So he threw a world-class, what I'm calling a world record party that lasted 180 days, half a year. And because that just didn't satisfy, you would think a 6-month party would satisfy, but no, he's not satisfied. This isn't good enough for him. So at the end of the party, he throws another week-long banquet and kind of ups the level of what's going on. And the story, it continues to unfold, and we see that in pursuit of more, you gotta have more, gotta have more. The 6-month party wasn't enough. Gotta have this crazy week-long banquet and make it even more opulent. Okay, so in pursuit of more, he gets drunk. And after most likely watching slave girls dance seductively all around him at this point, that's not enough. So he's not being satisfied. So he takes it to the next level. Now he calls for his queen to put on her royal crown in order to make an even more seductive, lustful appearance in front of the banquet. Now think about this. The king's drunk. He gets his guests drunk. He's full of lust and passion. His guests are full of lust and passion. And he wants the queen to come out so all these drunken men would look at her, lust after her, okay, and be envious that they didn't have her. Notice how as appetites increase, satisfaction levels decrease. We have to do more in order to try to gain satisfaction once we start to go down this road. And what once seemed to temporarily satisfy us no longer satisfies us at all. So we have to go for bigger and quote unquote better and more. But in the end, it's never enough. It's empty. Because living to fulfill our selfish desires is a chase that never ends. Because what we find out is those desires are never satisfied. They're never satisfied. The intensity of the selfish appetite increases, but it's never totally fulfilled. Because the mind says, oh, I need this. I can't live without it. When you get in a stressful situation, when you're in trouble, when you're trying to escape. That's what the mind says. We've been there. You know what I'm talking about. Oh, I need this. Gotta have this. Can't live without it. Then the body and the emotions develop cravings and dependencies, and we seem to be pulled in that direction. Then our will becomes weak. And it gives into the increased need to indulge, and we're hoping that it's going to satisfy us, and if I just do this, it's going to satisfy. But what we find is that satisfaction is never achieved that way. And it's a vicious cycle. And it goes on, and it happens again, and it happens more, and it gets worse, and it gets more intense. And this cycle could happen hourly. You know what I'm saying? Cycle could happen many times an hour, or it could be daily. Or it could be weekly. Maybe it's monthly. But it has a hold on us, it just won't seem to let go. And that leads to brokenness. The third principle of brokenness is this. The third principle is self-indulgence leads to destructive decisions. In verse 12, it says, but when they conveyed the king's order to Queen Vashti, she refused to come. This made the king furious, and he burned with anger. Now remember how the king wanted the queen to appear before all the drunken men. The other element to the story is that after self-indulging and trying to satisfy his senses for so long, he now begins to make destructive decisions that impact his wife. Let's just call it what it is. He's now abusing her, really. He's demeaning, degrading his wife, the queen. And as we described, he's now so drunk that he makes a decision to bring his wife in front of everyone so they can lust after her and envy him that she is actually his queen. But she looks at this situation and she goes, no, don't think so. Not going to do that. And this decision also begins a series of destructive decisions that the king made throughout the book of Esther that we're going to be unpacking in this series. And that's what self-indulgence leads to. It reminds me of this gruesome story. This is a little gross, but I think it depicts what we're talking about here, and we won't forget this, so to help us remind us of this important principle. But this gruesome story of how ancient Inuit peoples once caught wolves. They would take a knife and they would freeze around a knife's blade some ice mixed with rabbit's blood. Okay, because that was attractive for wolves, and they would kind of take this mixture and just keep freezing it around the knife. And then when a wolf would approach, okay, it would aggressively begin to lick that frozen rabbit blood, that was frozen around the blade of that big knife that was in the snow. And then after a while, the blade begins to finally get exposed because they've licked all the frozen stuff around it. And then the blade begins to nick the wolf's tongue. But because his tongue has been numbed by the cold ice, the wolf is not aware of the cut, okay? So he continues to indulge more aggressively. And eventually the wolf dies from lack of blood. He bleeds out. The self-indulgence led to a destructive or fatal decision to be even more aggressive. He started, and he got more aggressive, and he didn't realize he was killing himself. He was literally destroying himself. Well, guess what? I want us to understand this. I know that was a little much, but you know what? Self-indulgence has the same effect on us. This is what we got to understand. It has the same effect on us. It leads to a place of brokenness and even destruction. Okay, now we're almost done here today. But I want to leave you with some sound bites of hope. Okay, because I understand, as we've outlined the principles of brokenness, it's felt heavy. I want to acknowledge that. I know it's kind of felt like, oh my goodness, this is heavy, this is a lot. I know it's felt that way, but how many of you know it's important to be aware? We got to be aware. Awareness is super important so we don't allow these things to destroy our lives, okay? So that's why that was important. But I want to leave you today with some principles of freedom so that we can have hope as we walk out of this place. Because we got to know what to do once there's messes like this already in our lives. Because if we're honest, there's probably certain messes like this that's in all of our lives. And we got to learn how to undo those things, right? So we're going to talk about some quick principles of freedom so that we don't have to stay in brokenness. The first principle is this: new power. Everybody say power. There's a new power. Romans 8 tells us about this. It says, so now there is no condemnation for those who belong to Christ Jesus. Now I want to just pause and say this. As we were unpacking some of this other stuff, maybe the enemy is trying to bring your past back to your mind, and maybe you're even here today, and maybe you're sensing, man, I feel like such a failure. Pastor Cullen, are you bringing all this stuff up? And now I'm reminded of this. Can I tell you today, there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. No condemnation. We're not here to condemn. The Bible's not condemning, so don't allow the enemy to do that to you today, all right? And then verse 2 says, and because you belong to Jesus, him, Jesus, the power of the life-giving Spirit has freed you from the power of sin that leads to death. Wow. Well, what does this mean? Guess what? Freedom doesn't come by self-determination. You're not going to get free from the cravings and these things that are pulling on us. Oh, no, we're not going to get free by self-determination. We're not going to get free by trying harder. This is the mistake so many people make. I'm just going to try a little harder. I'm just going to give a little bit more effort. Guess what? When we do that, we're doomed to failure because we're trying in our own power. Determination always fails. It just does. We have to use a power source that's beyond ourselves. So we got to start tapping into the power of Jesus and stop fighting our sinful cravings in our own power. Because it's his power that defeats all the cravings and the appetites that are coming against us. So accept and use the power that is in Jesus through the Holy Spirit. Okay? He's already given us that power as a follower of Jesus. If you're a follower of Jesus today, whether you feel it or not, you have that power living on the inside of you, and that power is greater than the power of sin. It's greater than the power of selfish cravings. It's greater than the power of selfish appetites that come against us. It's an amazing power. And the power of Jesus has already defeated the power of sin and selfish cravings and the appetites already when he died on the cross and he rose again from the dead. Jesus has already defeated those things for us. So now we need to use that power and enforce the victory over the selfish appetites, cravings, and sin and all this stuff that comes against our lives. And that's when we will start to experience the freedom that is already ours through Jesus. That's the hope. That's the good news today. Principles of freedom. The second principle of freedom is this. I know we're going through this quickly. The second one is new identity. Everybody say identity. You see, Romans 6:18, it tells us, it says, now you're free from your slavery to sin and you've become slaves to righteous living. You see, if you've received Jesus and you're a follower of Jesus, then you actually have a new identity. Brand new identity. So view yourself in that way. Let's view ourselves as having a brand new identity. See, we're no longer somebody, a lot of people say, I hear believers say this, well, I'm just a sinner, I sin, I can't help it. Whoa, hold on a second. Did you know that if you're a follower of Jesus, the Bible doesn't call you just a sinner, it doesn't call you a sinner. No. Guess what? It calls you a brand new creation in Christ Jesus. So today, we got to stop saying, well, I'm just a sinner and this is just what I do. No. We gotta say, I am a brand new creation because Jesus has made me brand new. We've got to see ourselves as being brand new because Jesus views us that way, and this is how he's made you, because he's transformed you from the inside out. So we got to see ourselves as having this brand new identity because it's a fact. The third principle, and that leads to our freedom. When we begin to see ourselves that way, we often, our behaviors follow our identity. So whoever we think we are, that's what we're going to do. And if we just think we're a sinner, that's what we're going to do. So when we say, I'm just a sinner, I just sense like I got to say this. Like when we view ourselves as I'm just a sinner and I'm just going to sin, then that's what you're going to do. But if you view yourselves as I'm a brand new person through Jesus Christ, he's transformed me through what he did on the cross, and I'm spiritually brand new, I'm born again, I'm made new by the power of God and the Holy Spirit, then guess what? That's what I'm going to do. We've got to view ourselves in a different way. All right, the third principle of freedom is this new confession. Everybody say confession. James 5:16 says, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. Now, there's a powerful principle that I learned a long time ago from a mentor of mine. A mentor of mine taught me this. He said, we confess to Jesus for forgiveness. Okay, we know that. We don't confess to other people for forgiveness. We confess to Jesus for forgiveness. We confess to one another for ongoing freedom. Confess to Jesus for forgiveness. Confess to one another for ongoing freedom. What does that mean? It means that we confess to one another to kind of have some accountability there, some support, help as we go along. Because when we do that, it helps to break the power of sin and selfish appetites that try to destroy us. Because the power of sin is in its secrecy. The power of sin is in its secrecy. Oh, just keep it quiet. Oh, just keep it between you, because the enemy likes to tell us if somebody finds out, they're not going to like you anymore. They're going to think you're bad. So we try to keep it secret. And when we keep it secret, it has power over us. So we got to confess it to break that power. When it's no longer a secret, then it loses its grip on our life. Its grip is broken over our life when it's no longer a secret. So I encourage us, find a mature spiritual believer, not just anybody, but a mature spiritual believer that we can confess to and pray with for that kind of freedom, a trusted individual for that ongoing freedom. And then we'll put up this slide again, Celebrate Recovery, because I just want to mention this type of thing is inherently built into Celebrate Recovery. It's a confidential environment where we can confess things like that, and nobody's going to take it out of there or think anything of it. We can confess, and we can help with our ongoing freedom because of that. So I just want to throw that out there again, super powerful. And then also, it's not only our confession to one another that helps with our ongoing freedom, but I also want to mention this. We also need to change the confessions that come from our own mouth. We need to stop talking about how defeated we are. Oh, I'm just defeated. Oh, this is just the way. I'm just trying to make it. No. We need to start talking about how victorious we are through Jesus. We need to stop talking about how difficult it is to overcome sin. It's just so difficult, the cravings, the temptations, the selfish desire. It's just so difficult to overcome sin. No. We need to start talking about and declaring how Jesus has already overcome the sin that tries to come against us. That's what we need to start talking about and declaring. We need to start talking about how sin has already been defeated through the power of Jesus. That needs to come out of our mouth. Our confessions need to align with God's word instead of aligning with our feelings, our emotions, and the circumstances that surround us. Because here's an important principle. Our life will head in the direction of our confessions. And a lot of us wonder, why do I so easily get off track? Why is it all? Because that's what we're confessing. Our life will often head in the direction of our confessions. So we got to make sure our confessions align with what God is saying through his word. And then finally, final principle of freedom, number 4, is new connection. Everybody say connection. New connection. Colossians tells us in 3 verse 5, it says, put to death the sinful earthly things lurking within you. Have nothing to do with sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires. Don't be greedy, for a greedy person is an idolater, worshiping the things of this world. So we got to remove the ties and connections to the cravings and appetites that try to break us down and cause brokenness. Because if these cravings are available to us, then we'll probably make ourselves available to those cravings. So the key is to not allow them to be available at all. Let's not trust the cravings. Let's not trust the appetites that try to, stir within us. Let's not trust those things. Let's not trust ourselves in that way. Now, here's what I mean. The other day, was it a couple weeks ago maybe, Shelly asked me, she goes, hey, what kind of dessert would you like for Father's Day? And I told her, I thought about that, and I said, you know what? It's probably best for us not to have a dessert for Father's Day because I just know myself. Like I know myself, If my favorite dessert is available, then I'm going to fully make myself available to it. Like if it's there staring at me, we're going to become good friends real quick. All right? And right now, in the season of life I'm in, I'm really trying to do a lot of things to be in tip-top shape. I'm working out 5 to 6 days a week. I'm doing, cardio, indoor, cycling stuff. And I'm doing strength training, weights. I'm stretching. And I'm really trying to eat clean and all these things. Why? So I can look a certain way? No, so I can really be in this for the long haul. I'm really wanting to go, long term. I want to do what God's called me to do and be able to do that. So I'm really, really paying a lot of attention to that. Well, Shelly came back around. She's like, no, I really want to make you your favorite dessert. And I saw she was honoring me. She wanted to honor me, and I just appreciate that. Honor's a big thing, one of our values here at church even. And so I'm like, well, if you insist, if you're twisting my arm, then then go ahead and make that favorite peanut butter pie that you throw down. I'm like, make that peanut butter pie. I mean, that's just like, woo, that thing's gold. Oh, my goodness. So she made that peanut butter pie, and when I saw it, it was calling my name. Oh, my goodness, that peanut butter pie, I'm telling you, we had a magical connection with one another. It started to talk to me. It's like, Cully. I'm like, yes. Even called me pastor one time. It's like, pastor. I'm like, I hear you. I won't leave you. I'm here for you. We just had a connection going on. It was like, And so what happened? I ate half of the pie. It was supposed to be for the entire family. I ate half of it. Half of that thing. It was just begging me. One more. I'm like, yes, I hear you. I'm there. Oh my goodness, but I knew before it was ever created. I saw what was going to happen. I saw the road, right? If it was available, then I was going to make myself available to it because it needed me. But you get what I'm saying. So what's the key? The key is to break the connections and opportunities with sinful cravings altogether. Now, if you're coming out of here and you're like, my pastor said that eating a piece of pie is sinful. That's not what I'm saying. I'm using a general example. So can you see what I'm saying? Just general, so to kind of bring a principle home. But what I'm saying is don't trust yourself to be around the cravings, the appetites that the enemy tries to stir up, okay? Because if it's available, then we will make ourselves available to it. This might require you to have somebody put a lock or passcode on your phone so you can't access certain material. It might cause you to make some changes in your friend group because you got to do this moving forward. Maybe not to allow yourself to get into situations, okay, where you are more prone to make a decision to self-indulge with your cravings. Got to make some advanced decision, right? Learn when you tend to let your guard down. Learn yourself. When do I tend to let my guard down? When I'm alone, maybe? When I'm stressed out? Maybe at night? Okay? Maybe when I'm tired? Maybe when I'm frustrated? Learn yourself. And when your guard tends to go down so you cannot fall to these things, right? And then let's be proactive. Make advanced decisions to set yourself up for success instead of failure during those times. Practical things you can do. Super important. Super important. And then we got to make new connections. Just real quick. New connections, what? One with our mind. New connections with our mind. Let's put that up there. So memorize scriptures. Get scriptures in your mind, okay? Get scriptures in your mind that replace self-defeating thoughts. We got that up. There we go. Mind. So make some decisions with your mind. Okay, memorize scriptures. Get them in there. Another new connection is with our heart. I'm flying through these because we're ending. Okay? We got to make new connections with our heart. Engage your heart in worship. Okay? Engage your heart in the presence of God. There's all kinds of streaming worship music out there, okay, that you can create an atmosphere of God's presence. We just did this one Wednesday night right here, Pursuit Night. Whoa, that was fire. It was awesome. It was incredible. The power and presence of God was so strong here on Wednesday night because we're creating this atmosphere for our hearts to connect with God. We do that on Sunday mornings during our worship times here, and then you can do the same thing in your car, in your home, in the shower, wherever you are. You create this atmosphere where your heart connects with God. It's a new connection. And then your will. Okay, our will. Make a decision. Make a decision where you're not going to let things happen to you, but you're going to make a decision, right? Schedule some time to pray and seek God. We have a prayer room where there's no distractions. You can get to it by reachchurch.1/prayer. It tells you how to book it, and it's 24/7. My goodness. Do this. Do this out of a choice. Not just an emotion. No, let's make a choice to do these kind of things. It's an advanced decision that we're making out of knowing what's best. And let me just say this. Another one is, if you're not water baptized yet, this is a decision that we need to make based on our connection with Jesus if we're a follower of his. Because when we make this decision, it's actually a faith step that facilitates greater freedom in Jesus. We don't have to be sinless or perfect to be water baptized because no one is. No one is perfect, okay? We just need to have accepted Jesus in our life. That's the only qualifications for being water baptized, that we've received Jesus. And I'm telling you, the enemy likes to prevent people from being water baptized by making us afraid. I've seen this in so many people, or making us feel like we need to be ready. I hear this all the time. Well, I'm not ready to be water baptized. So you're not a Christian? No, I am, but I'm just not ready. If you are a believer, then you are ready to be water baptized. If you've received Jesus in your life, you are ready to be water baptized. There's nothing else you need to do except just be water baptized. No other prep work that you need to get water baptized. Just do it. Or we think, I got to be a better Christian. No. Not before you take the step of water baptism, you just do it. Because actually, by you taking that step, it will actually facilitate something powerful in your life so that you'll get to the destination that you want to get to even sooner. See, water baptism is a key component to our freedom. It's actually a faith step that basically says, I'm declaring my old life was buried with Jesus, and he's given me a new life through a spiritual transformation. And I believe there's many people here, when you take that step today, even if you didn't plan to take it, you can choose to get spontaneously baptized because we got everything ready for you today. And when you take that step, there's going to be a new freedom that happens in your life because you are obeying God, and it's going to be a freedom and a new connection that takes place. It's going to really compel you to where you want to go, but you haven't been able to get there. I just believe that. It's for some people here today. And again, we got all the supplies, we got the towels, we got the change of clothes. In a few minutes, we're going to celebrate water baptisms, and you'll have the opportunity to take this step, and we're going to all celebrate together. It's going to be so awesome. And as you establish these new connections, you'll also find a new place of freedom over cravings and selfish desires that try to break your life. Now, here's what we're going to do. In a second, don't do it yet. We're going to stand up, and I want to give you the opportunity to make the most important decision of your life. Now, here's what I'm going to ask for us all to do. When we stand here in just a couple seconds, I'm going to ask that nobody leave the room, okay? I'm going to ask that we not leave the room just for a couple minutes, out of honor and respect to God and some decisions that are going to be made right now. So if we could just, when we stand, again, let's honor this moment, honor God, what he's doing, and let's not have any of us leave the room so that we can allow people to make the most important decision of their lives. Are you with me today? Can we do that? So can we all just stand right now in this moment of honoring God?